Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks, and once again, I'm not joined by Justin Peach. Still no word yet on whether he's now living in a box after purchasing the £800 coffee machine or not, but looking ahead to serious matters, we're continuing to build up to the playoff final on Sunday. And yesterday you heard from Just Joe, the Leeds fan. Now it's time to hear from the Southampton side of things. I'm joined by Glen from the Total Saints podcast. Hello there, Glen.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the chat and the build-up, and obviously looking forward to the game on Sunday.
No problem at all. Thank you for joining us. Glenn, before we start, do you think £800 is too much for a coffee machine?
It does sound a ridiculous amount, but it depends on your priorities in life, really. I mean, if your priority is coffee, then I guess £800 is not a lot, but it does seem in this day and age to be a bit of an unnecessary extravagance from the outside. But I don't know the ins and outs of Justin's life. So,
hey, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm glad I've spoken to two fans now who are completely neutral on the matter and both agree with me. Welcome to the number one championship podcast, The Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Just a reminder that this is your last chance to get tickets for our live show, looking ahead to the playoff final. It's taking place this evening or Thursday evening, depending on when you're listening to this. It's at the Horny Man at Hayes in London, about halfway between London Bridge and Tower Bridge. Not only will we be getting a top class show, you'll be getting a t-shirt to mark the occasion and free bets from our friends at SBK, and it only costs £5. You'd be daft not to come. Doors open at 7. Link is in the description of this episode. Right, Glenn, let's look ahead to Sunday, and we'll start off with a nice easy one. How's the nerves?
All right at the moment. As you can see, I've been around the block a few times watching Saints, and so it's 50 years plus now. So it's I'm not the sort to get mega hyped building up to a game, but like with the semi-final, it definitely feels different to your bog standard league game. You know, when you get to a couple of days before, obviously it's a ground that we don't know particularly well because we don't play there often. So there's all sorts of excitement around that, and I think it will build up towards the end of the week. I mean, it's as we record, it's Tuesday, and I'm guessing by sort of Thursday or Friday, it'll be quite difficult to concentrate on boring stuff like work, and stuff like that. So it'll build throughout the week, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Is it a bit of a strange experience for you, because this is only Southampton's second playoff campaign ever? It's your first ever playoff final, so this is uncharted territory for Saints fans, isn't it?
It is really. I mean, since the playoffs came in, which I believe were late 80s, was it?
Yeah.
We haven't spent much time out of the top flight. We've only been relegated twice, I think. So we had a playoff campaign with George Burley as manager in 2007. And that was different to this one because we were the team that made a late run and nicked into 6th place. And we got booted off the park. I mean, we still had Gareth Bale playing for us then. So that's how long ago it was. So, and it's interesting to mention him because he was one of the players who got booted off the park by Billy Davis's Derby team. And eventually we lost the second leg. Sorry, we lost at home, won the second leg away, and lost on penalties. So it was one of those games that had everything going on. If you ever get a chance to look at that game on YouTube, have a look at Leon Best's own goal. It's you couldn't do it.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's the most bizarre goal one of the most I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's looking up the pitch on the edge of the penalty area and manages to volley it past his own goalkeeper. It's just you couldn't. So I mean, and obviously we lost that, and then Derby went up eventually and ended up with 11 points the following season, and it was disappointing, and that defeat kind of set us in a bit of a downward spiral because then we ended up in administration, League One, it was almost downhill from that point on, and it was a bit of a mess. So that is our only experience of playoffs, and I'm
Hopefully
hearing
it goes
about
better.
yeah. Well, I'm hearing about Leeds having a poor record in playoffs, but at least they've had 4 or 5 goes at it. We've only had one, and it was terrible.
Well, let's look back at this season first of all. How would you sum it up? Would you say it's been disappointing, or do you actually think it's been better than a lot of people seem to think? Because whenever I look at Southampton fans, it seems very split.
I think you have to think about where we were at the end of last season. We got spectacularly relegated. We were much worse than Leeds and Leicester were last season, and therefore you would think we were in a bigger mess. We'd signed a lot of players that hadn't worked out. The second half of the Premier League season was, Nathan Jones and Ruben Sellers, 2 of the worst managers we've ever had. And again, I go back to the point, I've been around a long time, and it's hard to remember worse ones than them. So having 2 terrible managers in one season, it's never going to end well. Russell Martin came in to basically a load of players wanting to leave, a load of players that the club wanted to leave, and he came in with this style of play that he wanted to implement, and and we started off reasonably well, then stuttered, then had the long unbeaten run, and I think any disappointment comes from the fact that we got ourselves into second place. On the back of that long unbeaten run, we got ourselves into second place, and it looked like we were going to make a run at the automatics, and then kind of fell away, and limped away. But I think if you'd have offered me certainly a playoff final at the start of the season, I'd have been quite happy with it. But I do understand if people are a little bit disappointed. It depends where you want to go back to. I mean, I guess we've been slightly disappointed in the last sort of 10 games of the season, but it's certainly picked up since the last game of the league season, and throughout the playoffs we've looked decent again. So yeah, quite optimistic that things will continue. But yeah, I do understand people being a bit disappointed that we didn't make a better run at the autos. But bearing in mind the ridiculous standard there was in the top 4 this year, I think can be forgiven for that. And yeah, but I've been quite happy with it. I mean, the football's been entertaining. We've had a couple of games where we've been awful, and a couple of games where I think Russell Martin has kind of overthought it a little bit and shot us in the foot a little bit. But I think you've got to remember also that Russell Martin is a young manager, and I felt like he's got to be given a little bit of latitude to make the odd mistake, and he seems to have, in the main, have corrected things at the moment. So we'll see how we go on Sunday.
Yeah, well, we will see how you go. I mean, you're talking about how you missed out on the automatics, but you did only finish 3 points behind Leeds. So, But when you keep that in mind, it doesn't look as bad as a lot of people have made it out to be. But with that being said, you mentioned Russell Martin. Where do you stand with him? Because we're talking about how this season has split opinion amongst Southampton fans. I think Russell Martin splits opinion even more from what I'm seeing. Because there have been reports that he'll be sacked if Southampton don't go up. Do you think that's fair?
No, and I think it's rubbish as well. I can't honestly see that. I mean, if you look at Saints' record of appointing managers, if you go back to sort of like 2016, we had Ronald Koeman. Ever since then, I think we've had 7 managers, and only Ralph Hasenhüttl could be seen as any sort of decent appointment until Russell Martin came along. I think he's done a good job. I also think that most people appreciate what he's had to deal with. The style of football is a lot better. We didn't have a style for 3 years. We were just shocking, and that ultimately led to us getting relegated. So I think anyone with a little bit of perspective should be able to look at it and say, no, he's done a good job here. No, I believe I sort of firmly believe he has, and the football's been enjoyable for the first time in 4 or 5 years, and that's regardless of the results. So I'd be very surprised and very disappointed if he was under any pressure for his job, regardless of the result on Sunday.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see on that front, won't we? But let's live in this kind of potential universe where Southampton don't get promoted on Sunday. New manager might potentially be one of the things that changes. What else do you think will change when we're looking at the playing squad? Because that could be quite different next season, couldn't it?
Yes, it could be, very much so. I mean, you're looking at we've got some quality players like Kyle Walker-Peters, who's, I think the players that stick around, in it for a season in the Championship are kind of worth their weight in gold. And with someone like Kyle Walker-Peters, if he wants to go, then I think fair enough. He's given it a go in the Championship for a season. Don't forget he played for England 18 months ago. Yeah. So he's, to have a player like that play a full season in the Championship, play as well as he has, didn't sulk at any point whatsoever. So he would go with sort of like with my best wishes. Some of the loan players have been key this year. Taylor Harwood-Bellis will be playing in the Premier League next year. If we go up, then there's a deal in place for him, and he will be our player. If we don't, then he will go, and they'll have to replace him. Flynn Downs is the same, though there's no deal in place. But he's been a tremendous player this year, and arguably our most important player. So he won't be around. But I don't think it'll be as bad as you think it'll be. I can't see Adam Armstrong, for example. I can't see him moving to a Premier League club, even if we don't go up. So I don't think it'll be too bad, but there will certainly need to be a little bit of a rebuild for sure. And obviously financially, we unlike certain other teams, we chose to play by the rules. It would have been nice if we'd decided not to play by the rules and kept James Ward-Prowse, because then I wouldn't be here and we'd have been promoted already. But there you go.
Well, Glenn, let me kind of follow on from that point by asking you, assuming if Southampton didn't go up on Sunday, do you think you'd be capable of pushing for automatic promotion again?
Yes, I do, because I don't think the Championship is going to be as strong as it was this year. I don't see the teams coming down being anywhere near as strong as the two teams that have already gone up or Leeds this year. So I see no reason at all why Saints wouldn't be challenging again next year. I think the points needed to get automatics will be a lot less next year. So even if there is a bit of a rebuild, I think whichever team stays down out of Leeds and Saints, I think we'll still be challenging very high in the table next year.
Yeah, interesting, because Joe, who's the Leeds fan who we spoke to yesterday about that, said exactly the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see what does happen. Let's take a positive spin though, Glenn. If
Absolutely.
Southampton do go up on Sunday, how do you think you'll do back in the Premier League? I imagine we'll be hoping it's better than last season.
Yeah, it's funny. The last time we got promoted to the Premier League, we'd been out of it for 7 years. And so all the teams we were playing, or going to be playing, were different players. And it was much more exciting. I think if we go up this year, it'll be, oh, great. We're going to play all these same teams again, all these same players. There won't be anything that's really a surprise. In an ideal world, you'd be able to go up from the Championship, keep the same team, and be relatively competitive, or at least have a chance of staying up. But it seems to be more and more the case these days that you've either got to go up and spend millions, like Burnley did this year, for example, and still got relegated, or you go up and spend nothing, like Luton, and you get relegated. And what did Luton get? 29 points, and they finished third from bottom. It's going to be ridiculously difficult. And hope, but I do see potential in the way that we play, and in the players that we've got. There would obviously need to be additions, and that they would need to be additions to step into the first team, because you've got 3 or 4 players who are playing regularly, who we know have not really done it at Premier League level before. So there would certainly need to be some recruitment, but. And I think the thing you've got to remember when you go up as well is that you're not competing against the Manchester Cities or the Liverpools of this world. You're competing against Crystal Palace downwards, sort of thing. They're the teams you've got to get the results against to keep you up. So you might look at a particular player and go, well, he won't be any good against Manchester City. No, he might not be, but as long as he's good against Brentford, Wolves, teams like that, then you've got a chance. So yeah, but I'm under no illusions that it will be very, very difficult. And to be honest, I haven't even really been thinking about it, because it's just like, it's a completely new season. Let's get there first, and then Yeah, there's no point.
We'll worry about it later, shall we?
Yeah, there's no point in sitting here going, well, this team will get hammered in the Premier League. Yeah, but it won't be this team. It'll be different. So we just have to trust the powers that be. Should that be the case, that we can be competitive next year? Should we be in the Premier League?
Yeah, and hopefully their recruitment is a lot better than the season before.
Because
that'll be a big thing, won't it? Well, let's discuss the game itself then, Glenn. Just looking at our friends at SBK, they have Southampton as the outsiders for this one. Leeds are the favourites. Do you mind having the underdog tag?
Couldn't care less. I mean, in the eyes of... I think both games that we've had against Leeds this season... we've been the underdogs in both of those. We were going to get hammered at home because it was on the back of our 4-game losing run at the start of the season. And we were going to get beat last game of the season because Leeds still had automatic promotion to play for. And both times I've been wrong. So I'm not really bothered about bookies odds or whatever. But no, I think we're the underdogs simply because Leeds are the bigger club. And that's the end of it. I don't think it's really based on logic, and there's probably more Leeds fans who've bet on their own team to do well. Fair enough. So I think that's why it's where it is, rather than any sort of football opinion.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I think you've got to remember Southampton, they're the only side to have done the league double over Leeds this season as well. So that must give you confidence.
It means that, I mean, I don't think it's strictly relevant in terms of winning the games, but it's. It certainly means that the team should go in there with no inferiority complex. It's like when you go into games where you're playing against a team who you've not beaten for ages or whatever. You sort of wonder if it's possible that you can do it. So the team won't go into that game with any inferiority complex. I mean, the two previous games, yes, we've won them both. They've been interesting from a tactical point of view. I'll be interested to see if Daniel Farke sets up any differently, because in both games he's kind of... Leeds have got the big players playing up front. They've got sort of like Nonto, Somerville, Perot, Jorginho. They're all good players, obviously. In the games that we've played them this year, he's played all 4 of them. And we've outran their midfield because it leaves them with only 2 players in midfield. And that's certainly been and as a result of that, we're on top of their back 4 a lot. And as good as like Rodon and Ampadu are, if you don't get the defensive structure right in front of them in midfield, then they come under a lot of pressure, and that's when defences crack. And we know that because we've done that ourselves this season, where we haven't got the midfield set up right. And so it'd be interesting to see if Farke does change it and play a third player in midfield, but he'd have to drop one of the big 4. So maybe he thinks that they can just sort of blast us away with those 4 big players, and that might happen. But and of course there's the Daniel Farke, Russell Martin thing as well, because obviously Farke booted him out of Norwich when he was a player. So I don't think there's any love lost there either. So lots of little subplots.
Yeah, and we are all about those subplots. We love those little subplots. I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned about how, Leeds may potentially go to a 3-man midfield, but that didn't work too well for them in the first leg against Norwich, where they did just that, and it left the front 3 pretty isolated, and that's one of the reasons why it was such a flat game. So with Leeds going back to the formation that we've all become very used to with them, I would imagine that's how he's going to go. But, as you mentioned, in the 2 games this season, it's not worked very well for them. Yeah,
and you got to remember Norwich were absolutely pathetic in that second leg.
They also were. That is a very good point, yes. I still maintain that it's probably the worst performance I've seen from a team in a playoff game. What's Southampton's biggest weakness, Glenn? What is the thing that worries you the most ahead of Sunday?
Funnily enough, it's not anything to do with the team itself and the way we're playing. The worry for me is the occasion. Yeah. Over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, whenever Saints have had an opportunity to do anything like move up a place or move out of the bottom 3 or move into the top 10 in the Premier League or as we were discussing earlier, really cement the automatic promotion places. Every time we've had an opportunity to do that, we've blown it. So, and I was I wouldn't have been surprised if that had been the case in the playoff semi-final, where it just didn't happen for us for whatever reason. So that's my biggest fear. But on the just not adapting to the occasion. But with regards to the team itself, we've got a tendency to miss chances, even though we've scored a lot of goals this season. We do have a tendency to miss chances. Che Adams, if he plays, is massively inconsistent, sometimes within the context of one game. Sometimes he looks like the best striker in the Championship. I'm the big man, give me the ball, you're not having it, I'm the best player here. Sometimes he looks like that. And then 20 minutes later, he's got a pair of trampolines on his feet and the ball's bouncing everywhere and he's terrible. So if he plays, he'll be an interesting one. Adam Armstrong scored a lot of goals this year, he's missed a lot as well. So if he has a good day where he's getting everything on target, then obviously the team will have a good day. So that's the area of the team that that I worry about. And sometimes when we've had results where we've dominated games and then not won, whatever, you quite often look at the amount of chances we've missed and go, that's the problem there. So yeah, that's that I would say is our weakness at the moment, potential weakness.
Interesting. That is really interesting. Let's go look at the flip side. What's Southampton's biggest strength?
Biggest strength at the moment seems to be through the midfield. It's changed at various times this season. When Flynn Downs plays, we're a completely different side. He makes such a difference to our team. It's ridiculous. We've recently changed to playing 3 central defenders, which seems to make us more solid, and that's cured one of our Achilles heels, which was stopping crosses coming into the box. We just weren't doing it. We were playing as like a narrow back four, and crosses were coming in from all over the place, and it was a nightmare. Playing 5 at the back has enabled us to stop teams getting crosses in. It'll be useful against teams like Leeds if they go with their usual setup, because obviously they've got Non-Turn Somerville playing off the wings, who are very dangerous players. So getting close to them will be good. But the midfield 3 of Downs, Smallbone, and Aribo have just been getting better and better as over the last sort of like 3 or 4 games. We took a while to work out how to replace Stuart Armstrong, who got injured, because he was a key player, sort of like the first 3 quarters of the season, really. But it all seems to be coming together, and it all started at that away game at Ellen Road when he changed the formation. It's the first time we started with a back 3, but it seems to suit every player that we have. So at the moment, I'd say the formation and the way we're set up and the midfield is the key for us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that as well, because Joe, who we spoke to, the Leeds fan, said he's worried about the midfield because in both games this season, Southampton just completely overran them in midfield. Be interesting to see what formation Russell Martin goes for as well this weekend, whether he goes 3 at the back or 4 at the back. You'd assume 4 at the back, wouldn't you? Because that's what he's been doing most of the season.
I know, but say the last 3 games, including the playoffs, it's been a back 3, and it enables him to get Jack Stevens, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Jan Bednarek, 3 of our best players. It enables them to all play in their natural sort of positions. So I imagine we'll go with the 3. The only real question mark is what we do up front, and that depends on if Che Adams or, whisper it quietly, Ross Stewart is actually fit.
Ooh, there we go. That's a subplot I like. Ross Stewart barely kicked a ball all season.
Nope.
And then scores the winning goal for Southampton right at the death.
That'd be nice.
That is something I would like to see.
Or misses a penalty in the shootout. One of the 2.
Or one of the 2, yes. Or Che Adams, probably on his way out of St Mary's.
Yeah.
Says goodbye with a last minute winner. That'll be good as well.
Be nice.
Absolutely. Of course, Southampton have some exceptionally talented players. Cal Walker-Peters included in our team of the season, as was Adam Armstrong, who's had a ridiculous season. You've mentioned Flynn Downs plenty. Taylor Harwood-Bellis as well has had a really good season. If you had to pick out one player in particular, though, Glenn, who's going to be the key player for Southampton on Sunday? Is it Downs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not only does he, we obviously try and keep the ball. There's always the danger when you lose the ball that we've got too many players in front of the ball. But with Downs is that insurance policy. He gets about the park. He's really quick. He's really aggressive. He will get stuck in. He will stop a lot of counter attacks at source. So he will be key. And recently he's started adding a lot more sort of like attacking wise to his game, usually by sort of picking up the ball on the half turn, turning and just driving into the heart of the other team. And it's he's an exceptional player. I don't know what I'm saying. He's actually crap, and I hope West Ham sell him for a knockdown fee. I think that's, it's the old never fall in love with a lone player thing. But, considering we lost our main midfield player, ironically, to West Ham at the start of the year, to be able to sort of like replace him with a player like Downs, as obviously he had a connection with having played for Russell Martin at Swansea. To have him come in, he's been absolutely tremendous, and he seems like a funny lad as well. Sort of like he'd managed to get himself E. coli poisoning at the start of the year by eating raw liver or something stupid like that. So it just seems like he's a bit of a nutcase, and he's the sort of character that you sort of like really warm to. But mostly he's a tremendous player, and if he plays, then the whole team plays.
Yeah, as long as he cooks his food, of course.
Absolutely.
Looking at Leeds, if you had to pick out the player who you feared the most with them, who would that be?
In the games I've seen, I thought Gnonto was the most dangerous player because he plays on the right. Our left-hand side he'd probably be Ryan Manning, he's all right, but he's not as good as Walker Peters on the other side. So I'd say Gnonto versus Manning will be a very interesting battle. Be interesting to see how that one goes. I mean, you could pick any one of the Leeds front line. Obviously, Somerville was the player of the season. He's been quiet in the games against us, so he probably thinks he's due a decent performance and a goal perhaps against us. So the two wingers, Gnonto and Somerville, were the two that I'd be most concerned about.
Yeah. Are you particularly concerned about Ryan Manning having to deal with Willie Gnonto for a whole afternoon?
Yeah, because that was in the game against Leeds at the tail end of the season. That was the one area where we were a little bit dodgy. The rest of the performance was very, very convincing, but that was the one area where there was a bit of a problem, and that is one I'd be particularly concerned about. But there is a chance that Russell Martin will pick Ryan Fraser and play him as a left wing back, which would be a very interesting selection. That's basically what he did against West Brom. But I think people forget that Ryan Fraser played fullback for Bournemouth for a whole season, so he can do it. But you wouldn't fancy him under a high ball, big diagonal, being all 5'3" or whatever he is. But
Willie Gnonto's not very tall either. So
no, but I'd expect Ryan Manning to play, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Right, Glenn, one final question for you, and it's a big one. How do you think it will go on Sunday? What's your score prediction?
Assuming both teams turn up and one doesn't shrink under the expectations of the day, sort of thing, I think we'll be a bit more solid than Leeds will be. I think Daniel Farke will pick all four of those players and hope that that's enough to blow us away. So I just fancy us through midfield again. And so for that reason, it won't be a runaway game. Certainly not for us, because it never is. It's never that easy. Being a Southampton fan, never happens like that. So I'll go for a narrow 2-1 win, and it's one of those games where it's either going to be brilliant or absolutely horrible at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the playoffs, mate. That's how it goes. It's the best way to get promoted. It's the worst way to not get promoted.
Yeah,
there we
absolutely.
go. Glenn, thank you for your time today, mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
Just a reminder, everyone, that we have our live show coming up on Thursday evening. Depending on when you're listening to this, it may be too late by that point. But if you are listening to this before Thursday evening and you're in the London area, make sure you get involved with our live show at the Horniman at Hayes. You can find a link in the description of this episode. Only £5 a ticket. Get involved. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks. We'll be back again tomorrow.